Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Stacy, I'm a registered nurse. And if you're new here, welcome in. If you're coming back, I'm so glad to see you. Let's talk about what it means to be a good leader. Let's talk about it. And if you like what you see here, then I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow for more. And if you have ideas, suggestions, comments, disagreements, anything, I would love to hear about it in the comments. What does it mean to be a leader? In healthcare, anywhere. What kind of leader are you when you're a leader? Do you have to be a manager to be a leader? No. So what I'm talking about is not necessarily management, but leadership. You can be a leader if you're not a manager, but you should be a leader if you are a manager. And what does good leadership mean to you? For me, I've always shied away from leadership, although I am the oldest child, and I've always naturally gravitated toward kind of leading people and giving people advice and giving people educational moments. I have always done that since I was a little girl because that's been my role in life, to be somebody's big sister, to be somebody's mother, to be somebody's friend. But I've heard it said that being a manager, it takes a special person, and I agree. And I've always shied away from those roles because part of being a leader is knowing what you need to pick up and knowing what you need to give out. And that's not to say that you don't help others around you. I always hear negativity about management. But I've always had a 50-50 experience. I've had really amazing management, and I've had management that wasn't so amazing. And sometimes you think someone's amazing and you find out later that they weren't. I've experienced that too. Being a leader is not bossing everybody around. It's not giving everybody direction necessarily. There are leadership styles that differ. I'm sure we've all taken those personality tests in healthcare. I know in the last 10 years to obtain a new job, I have had to take personality tests and find out, what my personality type is, what my working style is, what my leadership style is. I've taken so many different tests over the past 10 years when I'm working. I have changed roles within companies that I've worked for, and I have always ended up in some type of supervisory or leadership role. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or if it's just because I keep being told you don't see in yourself what others see in you, and you should see in yourself what others see in you. I never want to look at myself in a way that would make anyone think that I think I'm above anyone else, because I never feel that way about myself. And it's very challenging when you're a leader and you like the people that you work with to separate friendship from work relationships sometimes. Because unfortunately, when you are a leader or you're a manager or any of those things, you have to be able to lead even the people that are your friends. And I've talked about it before, that working with your friends in a supervisory role, in a leadership role, in a management role, is very challenging because your friends know you intimately outside of work, and they know things about you. They know your quirks, they know your drama, they know your BS. And sometimes your friends don't take you as seriously. And so one of the things that I have been asked before I go into leadership roles is, how will you transition from working at this level in your team to stepping up to a leadership role? And that's a very hard thing for me to do every time. And I think that's why I've always tried to shy away from those roles, even when it has been suggested that I should be in those types of roles. Being a good leader means not being afraid to speak up when you see something wrong, especially if it's someone that you like and they're your friend. You want to protect your friends from making mistakes that could harm their career, that could harm their job, that could get them fired or disciplined. So it's really important that if you are a leader, that if you see something, you handle it immediately. You need to talk to the person that is doing something, and you need to be able to guide them in positive ways to make changes so that they can be more successful with what they're doing and not continue to do the things that could be harmful. In healthcare, when we do harmful things, we are impacting potentially lives, right? We're potentially impacting somebody's life if we make a mistake. And whether you work in hospice or whether you work in long-term care, whether you work in any role in healthcare, our goal is never to harm someone, and it's never to end someone's life. I mean, I guess there's people out there like, Dr. Kevorkian, that their whole sole purpose is helping people in their life. But I promise you, in a hospice role even, my goal is not to end someone's life. We want to, in hospice, make sure that somebody's end of life journey is comfortable and it is on their terms, as far as like they're with their home, they're with their family, what their environment looks like, how their medication regimen would look. Do they want to stop their meds? Do they want to keep on taking their meds? We're treating infections. So the thing is, when you are doing a role in healthcare, your goal is to not harm people. So as a leader, you need to be paying attention, and you need to protect not only your patients, but your team. You need to be protective of your team. And part of being a leader is protecting your team's work, right? You want to make sure that they're not doing anything to harm themselves or harm other people. Because if you're a leader, you care. You care about your team and you care about the patients that you're servicing, right? I think that that's important in healthcare, that you care about your team and you care about your patients equally. You need to care about both. And you're an advocate for both. Because when you're a manager or a leader, you're sometimes in the middle of your team and the top, right? So you are getting direction from the top. You are giving direction to the team, but you are also advocating to the top for your team, right? You're recognizing their strengths. You're recognizing where they could grow, how they might be able to advance in their career. Those are things in a leader you would see good qualities in your team and be able to recognize how to help your team members grow. I think that's important as a leader. It's important also to say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. And that's a hard thing for me in a leadership role, to actually disappoint people or make them feel like I'm judging them, or even I just have a really hard time correcting people sometimes, especially people that have been my teammates and my friends. But I'm learning that when you're a leader, you have to be able to recognize when you need to provide correction too, and how to provide that correction in a positive, constructive way. It's very challenging to provide constructive direction, because sometimes even when you provide constructive direction, people have had such a bad experience with other management or leadership that they are going to come at you defensive. They're going to come at you swinging. And that's very challenging to do in leadership, is to deal with somebody who is not open to receiving that information. Sometimes you just can't get through to somebody. Sometimes they're going to perceive everything that you say and do as offensive. And you can't control the way that others perceive you, right? Another thing with leadership is, having worked as a team member, I remember times when I wish my management had helped. I wish my leadership had jumped in and helped. So I have a tendency to feel like I need to help. I need to help. I need to do more. I need to do more. But I have to tell you that when I'm doing that, there are responsibilities that I'm responsible for in my role as a leader or a manager that may not get done. And that can come back on me. So it's really important when you are a leader to know how to ask for more help when you need it, to ask your team members to pitch in and work together, and to not feel responsible to pick up all the slack, right? Because we're a team And we should all be helping to pick up the slack. And if you're a leader and you always jump in and take on extra responsibility, if something happens, you always feel the need to jump in and do it yourself, you will burn out and you won't want to do the job anymore. I know firsthand, because when you have been a team member and you have needed help and didn't have help, you're like, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to be like that. Unfortunately, sometimes I have understood from a leadership standpoint or management standpoint, there are times when I am not going to be able to provide that assistance due to what I'm doing over here. And it isn't that I don't want to provide help. It isn't that I don't want to be part of the team. There are just times when you're in leadership that you simply cannot give more. I have always been willing to jump in and help where I can, as a team member, as a leader, anywhere in my role. I'm happy to jump in and take on what I can do to make things better when it's possible. If I've had a lighter caseload out in the field, I have been willing to see other people's patients. If I'm having a day where I've been in an office and I have the ability to jump in and help, I certainly do. Now, I have been in management roles and facilities more than once. I've been in that management level of of the team. And I will tell you that I've had some really good experiences in management and some really bad experiences in management. Times where I thought, this is not something I ever want to do again. I think it's great when you have the ability to reach out to the people above you and find out the information that you need if you're in a crisis or something is changing and you don't know the answer. I feel so blessed when I'm able to reach out and get help from people, because I don't have all the answers, but there's someone who has the answer that I don't have. And as healthcare workers, as nurses, we know that we're not supposed to say, I don't know. We're supposed to say, let me find that out for you. And I will tell you, I've done that a lot in my career. Let me find that out for you. Because sometimes you learn all this stuff, but you just don't retain all the policies and procedures. And there are people that are specifically doing policies and procedures that can answer your question and help answer your patient's questions, your team members' questions, and give the correct answer to meet the needs that are set, that their guidelines have set, right? When you work for a company, you have federal guidelines, you have state guidelines, and you have a company's guidelines. And it's a hard balance to figure out what's correct to do. So when in doubt, reach out. As a manager, times where I have struggled have been times when there just wasn't enough help. And so everybody was drowning and the building was on fire, and it never just felt like you could get your head above the water. I have been in those situations in facility management, and that is why I got out of facilities, because during COVID, nobody wanted to work. And I don't blame them. I didn't want to work either, but I had to pay my bills. I had to pay my rent. I had to pay for groceries. I had to pay for my car. So I couldn't very well stay at home and accept, being on lockdown. I had to go to work as a healthcare worker. I have worked in management situations, though, where everybody pulls together as a team. I worked for the most amazing company. I was pretty inexperienced in a management role at that time when I did step into that management role, and so I wasn't successful in that role. But the setup of that role and the setup of the management was amazing. You were salaried, but you clocked in and out to be accountable for the hours that you worked. And if you worked overtime, they comped you your time. It was a really good setup. Your time was comped if you worked more than the hours that you were supposed to work. They did not just take and take and take from you. And that's not to say that you never got called in when you were on call, or that you never had to deal with something crazy in the middle of the night in a management role, because you take call when you're a manager. But I really loved how they would comp your time. They didn't just take and take and take of your time and expect you to give more. On the flip side of that, I've worked for companies where you're expected to work 10 to 12 hours a day and then give more after you've provided that many hours a day. And I began to realize that was not something that I could ever give in a management role. something that my husband was very instrumental in teaching me about salaried work is that if you work more than your 40 hours per week and you start dividing it by the amount of money that you make in salary, you find out how much your salary really is worth hourly. So think about that. Think about that when you take a salaried position. That's one of the things I would say as a leader, that you want to think about hourly versus salary pay. That's an important thing when you're thinking of becoming a leader. But another thing that was good in leadership roles, I've heard a lot of complaints about a leadership that isn't helping. I'm here to tell you that I have worked for a company in a leadership role, the same one that comped the hours, in which the leadership team was expected to be out on the floor helping during lunch. We each took turns working in the dining room, passing out trays. We were expected to answer call lights when they went off. We were expected to provide drinks of water. And if you're a nurse, you were certainly expected to be a working manager. And I loved that company. Unfortunately, I took on a role that was too big for my britches, and I wasn't successful, and it ended badly for me. But if I could have stayed in that role, that was an amazing leadership experience for me, and it taught me a lot about what leadership would mean. But another thing about leadership is that you have to learn to be professional with what you're saying. We have emotions, we have feelings, and we want to react. I want to react, and sometimes I do. And that's where I wish that I could do better. And being a leader means not taking things to heart, not taking things so personally, right? Because everything is not directed to you. Sometimes the person that's coming to you is frustrated about the situation, and it's not directed to you personally. And sometimes, again, people are just going to take everything you say offensive. They're going to be defensive about it, and they're going to be offended at what you say. And sometimes you can't do anything about that. So when you're a leader, you have to learn how to not take things personal. But also, if you are in a leadership role, I think it is important to recognize that you're still a part of the team. You're still a part of the team, and you're still expected to be a part of the team. When you take a job where you have a desk and an office, that does not negate, in healthcare, it does not negate your ability to provide healthcare related needs, hands-on care. When you are in an office and you are providing a leadership role, you still should be willing and want to provide hands-on nursing if you're a nurse. Because what I have learned over the years about nursing, when I became a CNA and I graduated up to becoming an LPN, I thought I would not have to do CNA work anymore. Somewhere in my young brain, back in the day, I thought, okay, if I do this, I'm not going to have to do this anymore. But what I've learned about nursing specifically is the higher you go up, the more responsibility you get, the more knowledge you obtain. You take on that and this. You still have to be responsible for this. Not as much. I will say that. CNAs work hard. But being up here and getting up to this point does not negate your ability to be able to do that. Obviously, if you have physical ailments or a reason that you can't lift, tug, pull on people, I get that. I've been there with you. But when we're up here, we still have to be able to come to this level and do this job too. That's the thing about leadership. Even though you take on more responsibility, you are still a member of the team, and you should still be acting as a member of the team. It is very important to recognize that different roles have different responsibilities. A CNA is responsible to provide personal cares, make sure that someone is fed, make the bed, provide, personal human interaction with patients. CNAs give a lot. They give a lot. They have a lot of duties. They're giving showers, they're giving baths, they're taking people to and from the dining room, they're getting people in and out of bed. But when you become a nurse, the challenge there is balancing that time that we are doing our nursing duties and when we can help do a CNA duty. One thing as a nurse, when you are a nurse, you are in a leadership role. So when I'm talking about leadership, I'm not just talking about management. When you become a nurse, you are in a leadership role to CNAs. And when you become a leader, that does not mean not performing those duties that you used to perform as a CNA, or maybe you work as a nurse and you've never experienced working as a CNA. I think that that's a beneficial step in the process, just from my personal experience. I know that CNAs want us to help more as nurses, and I want to help more as a nurse. Sometimes as nurses we can't give that, but I will tell you ways that can make a difference. If you see a call light, answer it. If somebody needs a glass of water, they need you to pull the covers up. They need you to put a bedpan under them. They need you to take a bedpan out. Those are things we can do as nurses that we should not. I will not go looking down the hall for a CNA unless it's something specifically. I've had patients that specifically wanted to work with specific CNAs and did not want me doing the thing. As nurses, we can take someone to the toilet if we have time. We can assist with a bed bath or a shower if our time is free enough to allow for that assistance, or make that time. I've had to do that. Especially if you're a nurse working on night shift and it's just you and the CNA, you learn to be a team together and do those things together. And I promise you, if you work well with your CNAs and you help each other out, your day will be so much better. Your day will be so much better. If you help them, they help you, and you work together, it will make your day better. So when you're a nurse, you are a leader of CNAs. You're not in management, but you are a supervisor. When I worked in one facility, my badge said RN supervisor, and I was like, well, that's weird. And it took a different mindset, because when you are a nurse, even if you're not the manager, you're still a supervisor. You're supervising the CNAs that are under you. And so it is important that you be involved with your team. That is my biggest takeaway as a leader, is that you should be involved and be a team player and help where you can. And if you're working with leadership and they're not helping you sometimes, then I would ask that you look at what they are doing, the things that they are responsible for. Because I know you see nurses sitting at desks charting, but I promise you that is a necessary function. Nurses have 3-hour window to pass pills, and we are not meeting that most of the time. We are passing pills, we are pushing meds through tube feedings, we are hanging IVs, we are giving injections, we are checking blood sugars, vital signs. We're doing the things, we're doing the assessments, we're doing the treatments, and we have to sit down and do the documentation to prove that we did those things that we said we did. Because if we don't document what we did and take the time to do that, then it's like saying we didn't do it at all. Now, does that mean a nurse should constantly just be sitting at the desk? No, but I promise you that as a nurse, I've worked in many facilities and I've never seen a nurse simply sitting at the desk. The unfortunate thing is that you, as a CNA, sometimes you're running your behind off. You're running your behind off. And every time you come by, the nurse is sitting at the desk, but maybe you're just crossing each other at those times, because I promise you that most nurses are not spending all their time at the desk. It does take a lot of desk time, so that I would say, as a person who's a CNA or a nurse looking at your manager, maybe consider, what are they doing that they can't help me right now? Obviously, if you have an emergency, you need to make that known. Hey, this is an emergency, I need help right now. But there are certain times when people in leadership roles, as we go up the chain, simply cannot provide the help that we want to provide all the time. And that's where delegation really comes in as a leader. I have had really good leaders that I looked up to. I've had amazing supervisors, and I aspire to be like them every day. As a nurse, I think about them, and I aspire to be that type of leader. And I aspire to listen to my charges, to the people that are under me, to the people that are looking to me to lead. I aspire to listen. I aspire to be kind and fair. Being fair is important as a leader, not taking sides, but looking at all the information before you and taking it all in and using critical thinking. That's really important as a leader. I had some really amazing nurses above me when I was a CNA that inspired me to become a nurse. I had some really amazing managers above me that inspired me to want to do that type of role. and being in leadership. And I have had some not so great managers that inspired me to want to step into that role and try to make a change. And as we know, sometimes change is slow. It's a slow process. But if you're eager to make a change and you're determined and you're steadfast, you can get there. What kind of leaders have you had? What kind of leader are you? What does leadership mean to you? I would love to hear about more of that in the comments. How have you interacted with leaders? What has been your experience working with leadership? Are they helping you? Are they nowhere to be found? I would love to talk about that in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you like what you see here, then I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow for more. I thank you so much for watching and listening to my long wind today. And I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.